Good to go.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Glenn Jones, you probably knew that. My assistant is Megan Smith. She's going to help as a volunteer in our leadership development program. So tonight we're going to do just a bit of an information orientation kind of session, give you a bit of background on what the program is all about, a little bit about its history, what's involved, and then discuss the commitment associated with participating in it. How about that? So this program is officially sponsored by the Calgary chapter. I ran a pilot of this program with some provincial CSSE leaders in 2015-2016. And the program is based largely on some leadership development consulting that we have been doing as a consulting company, and we've adapted it to the safety leader. One of my observations has been that oftentimes the Vice President of Environment, Health and Safety knows very little about environment, health, or safety. And it may surprise you as to how that person got to the vice presidential level. And the reality is they achieve that level through the organization because they have strong transferable skills, not specific skills. And a key part of their skill set is what we're going to address in this program. It's what I call foundational leadership skills. We're going to point the leadership skill development process to safety, and we're going to talk a lot about the roles that safety people have within companies. And we're going to talk lots about how people interact with the rest of the organizational chart. And not that you all want to be a VP of safety, but the idea is that if you explore and begin this development process, that possibility, I think, exists. So it's the soft skills side. And so we call it safety leadership, but it's actually just foundational leadership. And all of our context is, in this session, going to be around the safety person's role. And so I spent quite a few years, I would say probably the last almost decade, thinking about this idea of what really leadership is from a safety point of view. And I come down to a very simple conclusion. And I share this with our project managers and our discipline leaders in our consulting company all the time. And really, leaders are competent in the things they need to be competent in. And they're available to the people they're supposed to support. And this is very foundational stuff. I'll come back to it at the end. So I want to share some of my ideas about what I think leadership is and how we built this program and what the program looks like, and the next cohort of people that will be welcomed into the program and what the dates are in January, March, and May. And then we'll see how the interest is in the Calgary chapter. And if there's interest, we'll get a second cohort going. And hopefully it's part of regular programming that the Calgary chapter can offer its members. With the view to, so we're clear on the view, you know, CSSE's view is to be an advocate for safety in the workplace. And so the view is that if we can help our members become stronger leaders, we can help them develop transferable skills, I think you'll be more successful in your job. And if you're more successful in your job, presumably that will rub off and companies will actually get better at integrating safety into their enterprise risk thinking, and the world will be a better place. So that's kind of our end goal. It's not world domination, we're just making the world a better place. So when you think about leadership, you know, this is a leadership scale of different leadership styles. And I can tell you that safety people get stuck on this end of the scale. Safety people tend to be highly transactional. We make sure our workplace inspection is completed. We do accident investigation. We build emergency response plans. And we do all these left, right, transactional things. And the ideal types of leadership styles for driving change, cultural change, organizational change, is transformational or democratic or participative leadership. And so the safety person's got a very interesting challenge in front of themselves that you've got to be able to adapt leadership styles. So there are times to be transactional, and there are times to take on many different leadership styles. The reality is a recognition of your thinking and behavioral preferences, your strengths and weaknesses, your default leadership and communication style, and how to modify them sort of just in time to affect change or achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And so I've had this discussion with the CSSE board around the need for a leadership development program. And I can tell you, if you ask leaders in any company whether they think it would be worth developing their future leaders, they'll say yes. But there's very few companies that have formalized leadership development programs. There are lots of big companies like Shell and some other global companies have formalized processes to look for future leaders and develop them. But many don't. They don't have the time for it. They know there's a need for it. Maybe they don't know how to do it, but they never quite get around to it. So we thought we'd get around to it and create a program and make it available. And in the process of offering it to members, it hopefully builds a member value proposition. It gives people a reason to want to join CSSE, and hopefully develops more future leaders. So it's a very strong link to the CSSE piece. We're looking for CSSE members who are interested in participating, that can commit to attend the sessions as we schedule them, that will do the extra work between the sessions, which might involve self-evaluation, additional reading. We're going to do some journaling. It's real hippie kind of stuff. Sort of like where you write letters to yourself, to your diary. You'll never guess what I thought about myself today. And as a left-brain engineer, this has been a major effort on my part to transition, to connect it to my right brain and figure out how to use some of these tools to really look at yourself and understand how you interact with others and where your strengths are and how you can modify behavior and communication style to build consensus, be effective, and drive the kind of change you're trying to drive. Because most safety people are trying to drive change. They just don't always approach it with the right way. And oftentimes their ideas are rejected or certainly stalled, and perhaps they're not embraced with maybe the love and affection that you'd like. And I think part of it is how you approach it. So that's why I think we need a safety leadership program. The other part of it has to do with succession planning. From a CSSE point of view, part of our goal is if we can help you find that inner safety leader, you may also be willing to participate more effectively in CSSE, either as a volunteer or in some other capacity, and the organization will get stronger. The organization is starting to do more things. We have a social tonight, so I'm committed to buying beer afterwards at the Rose and Crown. We run NAOSH events, we run education days. There's lots of things we could do that's more, but we need more horsepower. So part of our plan too is if we help our members find their inner leader, it'll be a lot easier to find volunteers with skills to help the organization be stronger. It's kind of like a tipping point game as we help the organization get stronger. So when you look at the organization, and this will be part of what we talk about, CSSE looks like this. As a national executive, I've just come off the board as part of the board representing the Alberta Nunavut Northwest Territories region. And then we had 36 chapters. I think actually we have 37 now. And then we've got a couple hundred executive and committee members, and then our membership at large. And my view when I took this idea to the national board was we ought to have a program across Canada. And I think part of the challenge is trying to figure out how to scale programs and make them sustainable. And so part of my reason for doing this is to be a demonstration project and show that it can be sustainable, and then we'll work on scaling it on a Canada-wide sort of basis. I'm a firm believer that you can develop your leadership skills. Certainly there are some people that are born leaders, and even those people that are born leaders have got to develop lots of the leadership skills. But I think anybody can develop leadership skills, and if you want to work hard and try, you can be better, you can do more, you can be more. We have to want to decide to do it. The model that we're following is, I didn't invent this. but I've used it for about a decade in terms of how, as a consulting practice, we've worked with lots of companies on leadership development. But it's based on Marquette University, which is a Christian university in the U.S., and it's not that it's a Christian university, but I like the model. And so this is their model. We didn't make this up. So the Marquette University leadership development model says is that step one is you need to know yourself. You need to understand foundationally what leadership looks like, what it smells like. From there, you got to figure out how to work with others, teamwork, build consensus, problem solve, difficult conversations. And then from there, you got to figure out how to interact with your community. And the model for our community is your organization. So I call that last step organizational leadership. So it's know yourself, capacity for building relationships and teams, then interaction with your organizational hierarchy to drive change, even when you're not the hierarchical leader. See, safety people are rarely the hierarchical leaders. They're often at the side here, and they have to create change through influence and consensus building. And so actually your leadership skills need to be even stronger because you don't have hierarchical power. The people at the top have easy power, easy control. It's easy to lead because people follow, because they write the checks, they make the decisions. Safety people tend to be on the side and are influencers. And so your leadership skills need to be much better developed. And so we started taking it one step further to say beyond the Marquette model. And I always remind people that I'm not claiming to have invented this. It is the Marquette model stretched and applied to safety leadership challenge. And so beyond the organization, there's this idea of linking what you're doing to the organizational vision and mission. And that's often missed. We plow ahead with our hearing conservation programs and our energy isolation programs, and we often are disconnected from the big picture. What is the corporation trying to do? And so part of our organizational leadership discussion is going to be around linking your work to the organization's vision, mission, strategy, so that you are part of that big process. So this is what our program looks like. Part one, leading yourself. You know who you are. You're thinking of behavioral preferences. And that's often a scary first start of your leadership journey because people don't really want to look at themselves. But you really have to, if you're going to be effective, to know why you get success sometimes and why you don't. And if you're not going to be self-critical, the rest of it becomes very difficult. Step two is how do you lead people, teams, non-hierarchical leadership, influencer, consensus builder, having your 15-second elevator speech ready, your 20-minute presentation ready, and be able to lead a discussion for a half day. So that capacity to influence people and bring them into your idea. And then from there, it's understanding the organization. Like I look at an org chart, and I see where safety is embedded, and safety can be embedded in a place that makes it almost impossible to be successful. And safety can also be embedded in a place that makes it very easy to be successful. And oftentimes I think safety people don't even look at the org chart and make that assessment before they're taking the job. And so organizational leadership is about understanding where you're going to be in the org chart and what's that going to mean in terms of building consensus, communicating, and trying to drive change. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is a model of leadership that I think is useful to look at. We focus in this quadrant here, knowledge, health, and safety. You know, we're CRSPs and NCSOs and certified hygienists and ergonomists and occupational nurses and things like that. But there's other pieces that we need, and this is what we want to try to look at, is some of these other pieces. If we're going to get good at the whole, we've got to get good at each of its parts. And so we're going to look at what it means. And so one of our starting points that we're going to do in day one is figuring out what leadership is. And this is a very good definition. Leadership is getting other people to do stuff you want and they think it's their idea. That's real leadership. If you can build consensus across your organization and be influential such that the operations people want what you want, you'll have been successful. And the model for that is Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer got his friends to paint his aunt's fence, and they thanked him for the opportunity. That is leadership. That is influence, consensus building, and getting change happening within the organization. If you were good like that, your operations team would do everything you want, and you'd have almost nothing to do. That's really what the goal is, right? Work yourself out of the job. So some people look at this kind of stuff and say, this is leadership. And I look at those kind of signs and I say, that's not leadership, that's not leading, that's sort of following. How many times have you seen that sign? It is kind of cute. I was down in Tabor doing an audit, and there was a sign in front of the diner, and I thought, that's leadership. That is bringing attention. His boss told him to change the sign, and he did. Soup of the day today, whiskey, tomorrow beer. That's Tabor. It's good stuff. This is my definition of leadership. Leaders see a job or task that needs to get done, and they do it, even though I know there's a good chance someone else will get credit for it, and they're okay with that. To me, that's leadership. You see a job that needs to get done, you're willing to do it, and you believe that the ecosystem is true and pure, that probably disconnected in time and space, you will be rewarded. So followers want instant gratification. Leaders recognize that a job needs to get done, and you will be recognized, disconnected in time and space. And you have to believe in the system, and you will be rewarded. You will get promoted. You'll become the VP of safety. So when we think about leadership, we think historically around either political figures, and all of these sorts of political figures are faulty, and some could say tragic. But we start to use traits theory and say, what are the great aspects of these leaders, and which of those traits would we see reflected in ourselves? Guys like JFK, great orator, great strategist, certainly a faulty figure. Lots of great leaders in military. We think about them standing on the battlefield, and leadership in military certainly is a strong piece. My brother's a retired captain from the Army. He was in Afghanistan, and some of the things those guys had to do, like military people see leadership, and it's required for that cohesion of the team. We live in a world where we're not exposed to those sorts of extremes, and so leadership can be a nice to have kind of thing. But the successful groups have strong leaders. And so the key thing I keep reminding people is that this programming is going to be about convincing you that leadership's got nothing to do with hierarchy. That in any position that you're in within the company, you can lead. And if you lead, the system will recognize you. Even if you're far off to the side, recognize you and will reward you. And it usually takes time. So it's not about hierarchical leadership. Because many safety people are not in a hierarchical position to drive change by position. They have to do it through consensus and influence and be communicators, which is a lot more difficult. And also part of our role, our job in our program is going to be to distinguish between management and leadership, because there's a lot of confusion there. Many people manage. Management is about driving the status quo. Management is important in a company. I'm not suggesting you abandon it. Management is about doing the things you need to do. In our business, I have to put my expenses in, I have to show up on time, I have to be dressed a certain way, I have to review reports, a whole bunch of things I have to do to manage, and I'm maintaining the status quo. And as soon as we stop managing, chaos ensues. Leadership is different though. Leadership is about being a change agent. It's about energizing, it's about consensus building, it's about moving the organization from a current state to a future state that is better, and doing it in a way that everyone's actually driving the same way and they don't really see it happen. Leaders ruffle feathers, and when they're all finished, no one even noticed the ruffling of the feathers. It becomes a key aspect of how you do it. And so we're going to have lots of discussion around trust. In a non-hierarchical position, your most powerful force is the force of trust. It's how you build trust within the organization, across the hierarchy, up and down the hierarchy. Once you're trusted, people will do lots of things for you, and you can drive that kind of non-hierarchical change. And if you're currently in a management position where people report to you, one of the measures of how well you're leading them is if they bring you their problems. If they bring you their problems, they see you as a competent and available leader willing to help them. The day the people that report to you stop bringing their problems to you is the day actually you stop leading them. And the truth is, humans are pack animals. We want to be led. We want to know who the leader is. And when the hierarchical leader fails to lead, someone else picks up that role. And so if you are the hierarchical leader for your group but you don't lead, your people will find others to key on or get their cues from. And in fact, by default, they actually start following those other people. And so it's very important, both in hierarchical and non-hierarchical roles, that the leadership opportunity is clearly managed. The other thing is great leaders are orators. This is a good generalization. They're strong communicators. And this is a piece that's a little out of our scope, but the people that really want to succeed will link the sort of Toastmasters skill set with what we're going to do in our programming. Because great leaders tell a compelling story about themselves, whether it's one-to-one to a group or to a large audience. Great leaders tell a compelling story about the organization. They're loyal to the organization, and they can articulate that future state that's better than today, and people will see them as credible, believe them, and want to follow them. And so very much leadership is about the capacity to communicate, tell a story, and be convincing. And I always tell the safety people this: your role is not to be in the office, which is a nice place to be though this time of year. Your role is actually to be in the field where the action is. And I see that, certainly as an auditor, I see that a lot, that safety people get very comfortable in the cubicle in the office. When the action is, the opportunity for driving change, building consensus and influence, is where the rubber hits the road. And so, following Jack Welch's comment, every moment you sit behind your desk, from a leadership point of view, he describes as useless. So trust will be a big theme. Again, I'm not making this stuff up. Trust, there's a Stephen Covey, you know Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He also wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And we're going to talk about his 13 behaviors of highly trusted leaders, and how you build trust based on competence, how you avoid losing trust based on behaviors, and some of these combined trust attributes. And kids' self-evaluation as to where you think you're strong, where you think you're weak, and how you might be able to make improvements. And so a big part of the theme is going to be what I call situational or adaptive leadership. Good leaders are able to adapt to different circumstances, when to push forward and be autocratic, when to be transactional, when to be participative and democratic, and what that means to the various groups. It's adaptive leadership or situational leadership, being able to change your leadership style just in time to be most successful. And so these are sort of the general themes of our program. And as I mentioned, it's very much based on the Marquette model, and you can Google search them. They're going to a university in the US. What I really like is a very simple model. A lot of leadership jumps to team building, jumps to organizational leadership, and if foundationally you don't understand your thinking and behavioral preferences, you can't control yourself. And sometimes your default way of approaching things is the wrong way. I spent my career learning that the left-brained, analytical, driving way of doing things, although my default suggests it's the right way, is not always the right way. And part of leadership is trying to figure that out, figuring out when to take a slightly different approach. And it's difficult because you've got a default way of thinking. So we're really focused on that. We spend the foundations the first day and the time after the first day until the second day thinking about that. So if you're interested in the program, it kind of looks like that. We've set 3 days. We've set periods intentionally between the days. It's not a 3-day program. It's a day spaced with 6 weeks, then another day spaced with 6 weeks. And during the 6-week period, there will be additional readings we'll provide. We'll have journaling, self-reflection, and some activities that we'll be doing online, sort of in a collaboration kind of concept. And for the first cohort that we're going to run, we picked these dates. So we'll start on January 20th with the first day program, March 15th for part 2, and May 10th for the last day. And then beyond that, we talk about the fourth part of the program, which is leadership in action. And for the program to work really well, will be an opportunity for you to focus your thinking about leadership and what we've talked about to a specific leadership activity. You may already lead in the community. You could be a hockey coach or gymnastics team organizer or help your kid's school do something. And so there's an opportunity at the end of this to refocus your thinking around how you might be more effective in those volunteer leadership roles. And if you don't have one, we can find one for you. We can help you get involved in some CSSE related activity with a view to polishing those skills and putting them into action. And as you put them into action in a volunteer role, it's a very safe place where you can make more mistakes. Volunteers at CSSE make lots of mistakes. Whereas at work, it's a less safe zone, and mistakes are not always accepted the same way they would be in a volunteer role. So that's kind of our goal, that it's your fourth step. You'll find or refine your volunteer leadership opportunity to strengthen it. So yeah, so the general outcomes, the desired outcome is you develop your leadership skills, you add it to one of your self-development processes, helps you in your career, maybe helps you in your life, who knows. Some of the collateral outcomes, hopefully you can start to see the CSSE membership value proposition. CSSE members pay $200 a year. Hopefully this becomes part of how you see value in that membership. Hopefully you get to be more effective at work and get greater career success, and maybe it means that less workers are needed. So our tasks and tools. Yeah, so that slide I didn't change, sorry. This is a slide from my first informational session. It's over those dates I said, not over. We did it over 2 years before because we were developing the content as we went, transferring it from kind of the commercial content we used in our consulting practice, tweaked it for CSSE. So it's going to run over January 20th, March 15th, May 10th period. But we're going to have these group discussions and the presentations. We'll get some self-assessment. We'll bring in some guest speakers. We'll have 3 real fun days. We'll give you some opportunities to do some public speaking and presenting, because I know that's good for you. You like that, don't you? And there will also be some readings and other things that we will make available between those periods. And of course, there'll be journaling. So January 20th is all going to be about foundations, self-assessment, Myers-Briggs, strength finders, colors, DISC, all the other various personality. Have you guys all done those sorts of things? Yeah, one of the ones I like a lot is emergenetics. Emergenetics, unfortunately, emergenetics you can't do for free, but there are lots of ones we can do for free. So we're going to do a few of them, and you're going to do some self-evaluation of what you think it means in the context of your success so far, and perhaps in the context of barriers to success, and how you might rethink that. And so that's going to be our first day, very much about, do thine own self be true. Because we're not good at that, are we? We're really not. Nobody really wants to look in the mirror and say, what are the limitations and where are my real skills? And so it's about thinking of behavioral preferences, left brain, right brain, and how you approach communication and various circumstances. Both your behavioral preferences in terms of expressiveness, assertiveness, flexibility, and critically self-evaluating where you think you fit on those spectrum and as a continuum. Part two is all going to be about group values, communication, one-to-one, one-to-the-group, consensus building, how to get along. We don't just get along, don't you think? Working in teams. Teamwork is hard. Teamwork is very difficult. And the more complicated the task, the more difficult it is to work in teams. And it's about understanding people's interests and having everyone align their interests. So there's a lot going to be on communication, problem solving, conflict management. You've all experienced this positively and otherwise, I'm sure, in your workplace at some point. So leading people is a big piece of it. And the recognition that you need to sort of adjust your style depending on who you're dealing with and who the group is. And that's a hard thing to do. It's what I call the adaptive leadership model. We use this a lot in terms of trying to figure out the frontline supervisor and frontline manager's role in how they deal with workers and how they communicate the safety message, how they integrate the safety message. And as competency grows, we adjust the leadership style from a supervisory role through to a mentoring role. This is actually a model for parenting, if any of you are interested. You start at the far left with supervising little ones, and then once they leave home, hopefully you've evolved to mentoring them. Not all parents are able to completely make that final evolution, but it is a very good model. And so for frontline management or supervisors, providing safety leadership to a work team, and what that means is part of it's about teaching them they need to adjust their style and communication consistent with the people that they're trying to influence. Then the last day, May 10th, we're going to talk about organizational leadership. Where are you within your organization? What are you trying to get done? And based on what you're trying to get done, what's the best way to create influence, build consensus, and drive change from within without the authoritative capacity, without it being transactional, but how you create influence to get other people to paint your fence for you. Because that's really what we need to do in safety. We can't do it ourselves. We have to create influence so that the operations team decide what we think is a good idea so that they do it, even when we're not looking. So we're going to talk a lot about that. How does the organization work? What are the connections, interconnections? What's the cross-functional team look like? Where are we in the organization? And how are we going to drive change? So the lead and organization part is a major opportunity for safety people. Safety people in various roles, and how you drive that change and build consensus and be an influencer when you really don't have any power or authority. But we see that happens. And so leading an organization ultimately leads you to the opportunity, I think, to become the VP of safety. That's what you want to do. And then the last piece, as I mentioned, is to try to get you out, polish your skills, put your skills to work. You may already be volunteering and providing leadership in the community or somewhere, and you can start to think about how you put these skills to work. Or alternatively, we can help you find a role. And so that's the model, that's the idea. And over time, what we hope to do is develop a cohort of people that continue to offer this programming, so that I will slowly sail off or paddle off into the sunset, and this program can continue to be run by the senior leaders in the community as we polish the program up and the offering and get it working. And so we've got this first offering, and as we see demand, we'll probably get a second offering organized. There's been some interest expressed from the New Brunswick chapter, so we may be helping them to get a second offering going. But the long-term view is to have this as a standing program within the Calgary chapter, and then you get a beautiful little certificate framed, appropriate for hanging on your wall, to say that you are the CSSE safety leader. And so the Futures Leaders program is really all about, connection, self-assessment, online modules. You'll be in a team, you'll be in a group. You'll have an identified group that you will kind of go through this process with, groups of 4 or 5. There'll be lots of different case study opportunities, group discussion, and hopefully we have actionable things that come out of it for you, changing how you approach volunteer opportunities, but also perhaps how you approach your work at work. So what we're looking for is people that are interested in committing to the program. We've got these 3 dates set. We're going to roar ahead with this. Ready, fire, aim, I like to say. And from there, we will see if there's further interest. We'll launch a second cohort later. With the long-term view is we run 2 cohorts a year, one in the fall and one in the winter, and then get other people involved in delivering some of the programming. So if you think you're interested and you can commit to the dates, I have an information sheet that you can fill out. We have about 50 people who expressed interest. That's the reason why I recorded the session, is that everybody couldn't attend. So I'm going to put it up and launch it out to those people with the YouTube connection. And we will be, in the next couple of weeks, firming up where the cohort is and getting ready to launch the program. Any questions? Comments?
Glenn, I have a question. If we have a conflict with one of the days or part of those days, does that impact our ability to join the group?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, and so maybe a second co-work will make sense. Because I mean, it's important that you're doing the mid-session participation, and that you're working as a group, because you'll have a subgroup of 4 or 5 people that you'll be kind of chatting or discussing things with. And when we ran the pilot previously, in 2015-16, we had a little bit of that, and it was quite disruptive. So even if we end up with a smaller group, even if it's only 12 people that can come in, we're going to go with that, and then we'll build a little bit of momentum in the marketplace, and we can start to advertise dates further into the future. And if there's demand, we can move dates to weekends and things like that. But at the moment, we just got to nail it down. This is what it is. Who's in, who's out, and maybe you can connect later if you can meet those dates. We just had to choose some dates, otherwise trying to get 20 people to agree on dates. And so we just kind of chose those with enough time between.
You put the dates back up again, Glenn?
Yeah. So January 20th to the 3rd week, March 15th, and then May 10th.
Can you please tell us which day it is? January 20th, Saturday?
Oh no, I think it's, I don't know, I want to say it's like a Monday, a Tuesday, and a Wednesday. I honestly don't remember. I looked for spacing of approximately 5-6 weeks. And I looked at my own calendar because I have a major role in it. I said, these look like good dates.
It's a Saturday, it's a Thursday, and it's a Thursday.
There you go. Saturday, Thursday, and what?
Saturday, Thursday.
So is there any possibility to move the Thursdays to Saturday? No.
No, we can't, because you know how many people will then say, any chance of moving those Saturdays to Tuesdays?
No, just you ask the
Yeah.
group, because Thursday is the working day, right? Working day means some of may not be able to come and attend the program.
Sure.
Saturday means everybody can come and attend.
Yeah, I hope that you would be able to talk to your employer and describe this as a program offering that's worth other types of program offerings. You know, I'm trying to describe this as a program offering similar to what a university might offer. There's lots of university programs, you know, Mount Royal and U of C, U of A, all have leadership development programs. They follow similar models, but a bit different. The main difference here is that ours has been retooled to focus on safety people. We know challenges that you have. We know where you fit into organizations, and so a lot of our programming and conversation is going to be around how you boost your effectiveness in those roles. And so if you're interested, you can still fill out a form, because we're going to try to set a plan in place for a second group, because I think we're going to have enough for a second group.
Are you going to limit the first group? What's the maximum size?
Well, I think I was going to say the maximum size is 24. And that's just logistics. We could make it bigger. If it's 24, we can hold it here, which is, you can get free parking. If we make it bigger, we can get Bank of Montreal convention space through the chapter chair, Claudette, who works for CAP. They can get convention space. The downside of that, though, is parking is $30 a day. So if we limit it to 24, we can have it here with this free parking. If we get bigger than that, we'll have to move to some other space. And it's possible we could do that. We could go to a hotel like Blackfoot. Then there's costs involved, that's all I'm gonna have to talk to. Because this is sort of a zero-funded project. So the Calgary chapter would probably fund some costs if we had some. But the proposal I made to them was a zero-funded project. And they went, cool, that's a good price. And so that's kind of why that's the invitation right now. It's really about getting some momentum, right? That's why I said ready, fire, aim. You're gonna just get moving, and then from there, there'll be revisions, improvements, additional offerings, and then we'll start roping you guys in to get involved on various pieces of it. All right, other questions?
What do you see for the time commitment for the 6 weeks in between as far as journaling?
I think I sort of said an hour to 2 a week type of thing.
Oh,
It's just gonna be a few readings. You know, I've got a collection of Harvard Business Review. And there'll just be some reflections on that. We've got some online self-assessments like Myers-Briggs, Colors Disc. And there'll be some self-assessment, and when we're in phase 2, it will be some thinking through, you know, ISTJ versus, I can't think of the other ones, but ENFP, thank you. That must be you, is it? No. Anyway, so it'll be those sorts of just thinking through, and it'll be sort of short reflections that you'll just have record in your either online blog or online reflection or in a book. So 1 to 2 hours a week. No other questions? Well, if you're interested, I have a form that you can fill out so that I can capture all of your particulars. And then we will be busy getting organized and firming up our cohort so that hopefully by the end of November, we can start getting a solid plan for January 20th. Yeah, so I'll get Megan to hand these out, and we will say thank you very much for attending.